You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, we got some bad news. And it was the bad news I warned you all about last week. Well, it came through. And I've got some thoughts. Imagine that. Matt has some thoughts. But I have some thoughts on this one that I've been stewing over for the past week or so. And I want to go over it and just kind of tell you what I expect to happen with Real Salt Lake with the new ownership. Spoilers, I don't have a rosy and cheery outlook for him. I'll go over Utah Hockey Club and what I want them to do this offseason. Doesn't mean that they're going to do it, but I did. Remember, if we go back to the NHL draft, I was the only person that I knew of from anywhere that predicted Tijigin being selected by the hockey club. So, I have that feather in my cap. And then I will also talk about transfer mania surrounding BYU and Utah, both in football and basketball. It's pretty nuts what's going on right now. So I'll be going over that as well. But thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you all. If you could do me a favor and like, comment, subscribe, 5 stars, thumbs up, wherever it is, however you listen, will help me out a ton. And get more spelunkers in here, which is the goal. And I am on Facebook, Matt Cave Podcast. You can find me there. And that's pretty much the only social I'm active on right now. I'm trying to get more active on Instagram. You can find me there, the Matt Cave Podcast. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now. I'm still getting my bearings when it comes to the big boy job, so I'm not streaming yet. But I did get a new rig, and hopefully I can get something going, whether it's YouTube videos or streaming. I haven't decided yet. Probably YouTube videos for now until I can figure out my schedule. But that's where we're at for now. So that's the update. And let's dive into things. So I want to start with Real Salt Lake. So this week, Ryan Smith, David Blitzer, the two majority owners of Real Salt Lake, the Utah Royals, Rio Tinto Stadium, because I'm not calling it that other name, they have sold. And Ryan Smith had the right of first refusal to purchase the controlling stake of Real Salt Lake, and he refused because him and his wife and the investment group want to focus on the Jazz and the Utah Hockey Club and the development of downtown Salt Lake City into something. And he is also in charge of the Utah Junior Jazz Initiative, which is the largest youth basketball association, I guess, group, whatever you want to call it, in the United States. And he also wants to build a similar thing for youth hockey in Utah. So he's got some grandiose visions, and there just wasn't enough time for him to run Real Salt Lake. I get that. I respect it. Don't want to spread yourself even more thin than where you're at right now. And I do like Ryan Smith for the time being. I'm a fan. I can change my opinion. For the time being, I like him. He's doing the right thing with the hockey club. He's being patient with the Jazz. So I get it. So what happened is David Blitzer no longer wanted to be the majority owner of Real Salt Lake. Ryan Smith and the Smith Investment Group did not want to be a part of Real Salt Lake anymore, period. And so they put the team up for sale. And guess who bought them? The Miller family. Oh, boy. Well, Spelunkers, we need to talk about what just happened with Real Salt Lake. The Miller family has returned. Like a sequel nobody asked for. It's like you had this really good movie going or this really good series. Almost like with the writer's strike back in the day with The Office and Scrubs. And then they came back and it just wasn't the same. It was, arguably worse. That's what's going to happen with Real Salt Lake. And this time, they've set their sights on Rio Tinto Stadium. And I will never call it that other thing. I'm not saying those words. I hate both that institution and what they're calling things. So, I'm not... It's a blueprint. What they're doing for Real Salt Lake is a blueprint. It's a carbon copy of downtown development schemes we've seen before. Step 1, buy the team. Step 2, promise an entertainment district or an all-inclusive entertainment spot that you can go to when you go to a game. Step 3, crank up those ticket prices, jack up concession prices, and parking while claiming it's for the fan experience. That's never for the fan experience. When you increase prices, that's not for the fan, that's for you. That's for you to make money. And if you've been listening to me for a while, when you buy a sports team, you're a billionaire. You're never going to make money on a team, on a sports team, period. You're not. And if you do, your team sucks because you're not investing in the team or the product on the field. You're just cranking up prices while paying minimal for what's going on the field, court, whatever. Ice, doesn't matter. Look at the Dallas Cowboys, okay? The Dallas Cowboys are the most expensive, whatever you want to call it, team in the United States. They have been for about a decade now, as rated by like Forbes and ESPN, The Athletic, all those other places. But they haven't done anything. They're a laughingstock in the NFL. They haven't done anything. They haven't won anything. They've barely made the playoffs. When they do make the playoffs, they don't win in the playoffs. So I don't care that the Cowboys are valued as the most expensive team in the United States. I don't care. Because they stink. So, and to keep going on this, you can tell I'm frustrated. Let's not kid ourselves. This isn't about the fans. It's about cash. It's about creating a high-priced hangout for tech bros from Silicon Valley and tourists while pushing out the working-class fans that built the soul of the club. The people that went to the KFC Corner. Do you remember that? The KFC Corner, when it was at Rice-Eccles Stadium, you got a ticket from KFC to go watch the game. Yeah, I remember that. They don't do that anymore. We've seen this movie before. Under the Millers, the Jazz never signed a marquee free agent. And I have talked about this in the past, how they probably couldn't because there is a stigma that surrounds Salt Lake City. Not totally unfair, but there is a stigma. And so with the NBA, it's harder to draw free agents, but they never even tried. They never even tried to go after marquee free agents. They were good when the draft was lucky. And like when Stockton and Malone gave us 20 years of miracles and Jerry Sloan, but never because of aggressive forward-thinking ownership. It never was. Never because of smart spending or player empowerment. It was always budget ball. And now that same thinking is coming for Real Salt Lake. In MLS, it's not as hard to compete with bigger cities as it is in the NBA. And the Miller family is going to treat Real Salt Lake like the Jazz because that's the only way they know how to run a sports team. They're going to raise prices to match what teams in LA or New York, Miami are selling, but they won't spend like those clubs. They won't scout or sign like those clubs. They'll tell us, hey, we're building the right way. While we watch the roster get weaker, we've already seen this. And it totally makes sense to me now. Once I saw the news that they were being sold, Real Salt Lake, I went, aha, light bulb went off. That's why Chicho Arango was let go. That's why they sold Anderson Silva. That's why they sold all of those guys, Jefferson Savarino. That's why they sold those guys, because this was always going to happen. And now look at the product on the field. They just lost to Toronto FC, who did not win a game previously. We're double-digit games into the season, and Toronto had yet to win a game. And if you look at the wins that Real Salt Lake has this year, it's over a winless LA Galaxy, and it's over a second-to-last place Houston, and it was over Seattle, who is bottom half of the Western Conference. In every other game, they get blown out or they embarrass themselves. Kind of like Diego Luna stomping on an opponent, losing his cool. So here's the kicker. It's not because the market can't support a winning team. We want a winning team. Every fan here does not want to watch a middling team get lucky once. It's because ownership chooses not to. Every success Utah sports has had, whether it was the Jazz in the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Finals with Stockton and Malone, or Real Salt Lake in 2008 winning the MLS Cup, it's been in spite of ownership, not because of it. And even then, back then in 2008, that was Deloy Hansen. And he ran the team like the Millers ran the Jazz. It's been luck, a well-timed draft pick, a breakout season. Nick Raimondo. Yeah, he was probably one of the best goalkeepers MLS has ever seen. He was why Real Salt Lake won that year. But it's never sustained. After that season, Real Salt Lake has yet to be really relevant again. Maybe one-off seasons, but never really relevant. And it was never built, and it's never been protected. Anytime a star player from the Jazz has the availability to go to free agency, especially under the Millers, they left. Karl Malone gone. Gordon Hayward gone. Even Andrei Kirilenko gone. It's pathetic. This isn't about building for the future. It's about cashing in. And by the time they're done draining the passion out of us, they'll sell again. And this time it may be even just to move them out. And when that day comes, don't say I didn't warn you. The soul of this club was for sale, and right now it went cheap. $600 million, and this team is not going to be any good. They're not going to be relevant, and the Millers are just going to watch it shrivel up and die. And I understand that this is kind of like a dry run for them to prove to Major League Baseball that they can run a team. But what they're going to try to prove to Major League Baseball is that they can run a team frugally and not cost Major League Baseball any money. And be like, hey, we're making money. And a lot of the people in Salt Lake are just going to be like, ooh, yay, we have a team. And so they're going to go support it. You got to be smarter. You got to look beyond the pale. And that's what I'm here for. And it's just, I'm tired of the Miller family, really. They're not going to get Major League Baseball. I'm convinced that they're not. Even if with those nice plans that they have, that beautiful stadium that they have mocked up for the Power District, I'm not convinced. I think, especially after this and the season or two that the Millers will be in charge before MLB votes on expansion, they're going to lose the confidence of Major League Baseball. And so Major League Baseball is going to go elsewhere. It's probably going to go to Portland or it's going to go to Nashville. That's where I think it's going to go. And they're just going to look at Salt Lake and look at the Miller family and be like, yeah, no. That's not, no. And so that's what I think, that's what I'm predicting to happen. Do I want that to happen? Absolutely not. I want Real Salt Lake to win the MLS Cup. I want them to be in contention year over year. That's not going to happen because look at the Jazz under the Miller family ownership. Once Stockton and Malone left, there was nothing. And they didn't even try to get anything. I mean, look at the rosters that they trotted out year over year. It was Andrei Kirilenko, Matt Harpering, and a bunch of guys you never heard of and will never hear of again. Raja Bell. Are you kidding me? No. And that's what's going to happen with Real Salt Lake. And it makes me angry. It doesn't even make me sick to my stomach. It just makes me angry that this is the future that Real Salt Lake has because nobody else in Utah wanted to buy the team. Or all the other rich people in Utah are afraid of the Miller family or something. I want ownership that wants to win things, not the Miller family. And yet here we are. So Real Salt Lake is just going to be another feather in their cap that they can trot around saying, yeah, we're the kings of Utah. And it's just not good. All right, so that's that for Real Salt Lake. They lost an embarrassing game, like I said in my rant there, to Toronto FC at home, by the way. And the stadium was pretty darn full. And Diego Luna made a fool of himself by stomping on an opponent. In the comments, people were like, tell me how that's a red. The dude stomped on an opponent. That's always a red. And when you're coached from a very young age, you are always coached. It's the guy who reacts that gets caught. Yeah, the Toronto player pulled him down by the neck. Yeah, he tripped him as they were getting up. But you know the better way to respond to clownish behavior like that is, Diego? Go to the other side and score a goal. That's the better way to do it. So, yeah, Real Salt Lake is only going to get worse. The coaching staff isn't going to leave because they're not going to get paid. So Pablo Mascheroni and all those guys who did a masterful job last year are going to be gone. So it's doom and gloom ahead for Real Salt Lake. I have zero faith in the Miller family. Zero faith. And I don't care what this does to my prospects of becoming a bigger voice in Utah, because I'm not afraid of them. I'm just going to keep speaking what I see is happening. So there you go. All right, let's move it on to Utah Hockey Club and what to expect this offseason. So I've read a lot about the Utah Hockey Club, and pretty much across the board, everybody was giving the team passing grades. It was a good season. It was about as good as you could have expected from this club. And they are absolutely right. Yes, I predicted a playoff season. That was a little rosy of a picture because when I made that prediction, Sean Durzi wasn't out for the most of the season. John Marino wasn't out for a third of the season. Robert Bortuzzo was not going to be retiring. There was a lot of stuff that hadn't happened yet when I made that prediction. But I stuck by it. I did. They almost made the playoffs. They did. If it weren't for St. Louis going on a tear, winning 14 of 15 games and something like 18 of 20 to close out the season, Utah had a really good chance. So, what to expect this offseason? I think let's do this. What I want to see them do is sign a big free agent. There's a few out there that will become available, and that would put Utah over the top because it would be that star power. Otherwise, I want them to be active in the trade market because there's always going to be one or two what they call hockey trades in the offseason, and I want Utah to be in on those. Whether they get the superstar in that trade or they get great players in that trade, that's what I want. So teams like Nashville, who kind of fell apart, they won the offseason and they fell apart. Steven Stamkos, guys like that, I wouldn't mind being in on them because we're getting to the point in this rebuild of the Coyotes/Utah Hockey Club where you need that humongous player to push the young guys over the top. Mikhail Sergachev is the right step. Now you need the offensive side as well to push it to where they're making the playoffs on a consistent basis. Utah becomes a destination, and people in free agency come to sign. So that's the goal. That's what I want to see Bill Armstrong and company do this offseason, and maybe even just go super aggressive, bundle like a lot of their draft capital they have over the next 3 years, and just swing for the fences. Just offer that up to pretty much anybody. Like maybe get one of the Kachuk brothers from like Ottawa or Florida. Something like that. Just go nuts. Austin Matthews from Toronto. Like in 2025, they've got all of their draft picks. Next year, they have like 6 draft picks. So it's really good. And they have basically $22 million in salary cap space. Trailing that only of teams like San Jose, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, like teams that are really bad. The Islanders are bad. So there's a lot of cap space, a lot of room for the Utah Hockey Club to improve and to be players in the offseason and be massive players. And I still would like them to go and just talk to Anaheim about Cutter Gauthier or Mason McTavish, maybe even Leo Carlson. So that's what I want to see if any of those guys are available because Anaheim is going nowhere fast. And so this offseason is going to be really exciting for the Utah Hockey Club, just like the regular season was. And I'm going to stick with my prediction from this year, and I'm already going to predict the Stanley Cup playoffs next year for Utah. 2 things that need to improve. Obviously, their overtime and shootout performances. They won 1 shootout overtime, and then they won like 2 or 3 overtime games. They were among the worst in extra period. That they lost like 13 games. That's unacceptable if you want to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You have to win at least 7 of those. Because if Utah has 7 more points, they're in the playoffs. There you go. That's what it'll take. And then the other thing that they need is more reliable goal scoring, which is why I want them to go after those guys that I talked about earlier and that I've talked about the last couple of weeks. So that's where I want them to go. Do I think it'll happen? I think so. I do. Because Bill Armstrong, the shackles are off of frugal spending, bad ownership, and he has an ownership group that's just basically saying, go for it. We want to win. We'll pay. Go. And so that's where he's at. I think he has the green light. I think he has everything that he needs. And there is a certain Mitch Marner who will be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. Let's back up the Brinks truck, shall we? Mitch Marner scored 102 points this season for Toronto. That crushed everyone on Utah. Everyone. Clayton Keller scored 90 points. He was the most of anyone on the club. The next closest to him was Logan Cooley, was 65. So yeah, you could say we could use Mitch Marner. And I really want him. Now that the Dallas Stars, man. In my friend group, we hate the Dallas Stars. We hate them. And we hate them even more now because they got Mikko Rantanen. Someone that I wanted the Utah Hockey Club to be after and be in the sweepstakes for pretty much from the beginning. So that's where we're at with Utah Hockey Club. The offseason is going to be just as exciting as the regular season was. And next year, I anticipate it to be a playoff year. Connor Ingram will hopefully be back and he'll have his mind right. And everybody in the state of Utah is rooting for him. I haven't heard a bad thing about him from anyone. So we are all rooting for Connor Ingram to come back, have his head right, and continue that upward trajectory that he was on. Maybe win comeback player of the year. Who knows? But it's really good. The future is really bright for Utah Hockey Club. All right, so now I want to talk about the future of the Utah Jazz. And suffice it to say, it doesn't fully rely on getting the top 2 picks in this year's NBA draft, but it's a pretty big piece of it. During the exit interviews this past week, GM Justin Zanuck did say that we're probably going to be in the rebuilding phase for at least another season. So another season of high lottery odds. Does it mean that the Jazz are going to lose 60-some-odd games away? Or 60-some-odd games again? No, I don't think so. Because at some point, you have to turn it back on, right? Because the past 2 seasons with the Jazz, they started off surprisingly. They were in playoff contention, play-in contention, all the way up through the trade deadline. And then they turned it off. This year, they turned it off completely. So, what if they keep it on for an entire season? What's going to happen there, right? Well, I mean, they're better than a lot of people give them credit for. They're better than what ESPN wants them to be. So, I think the Jazz, if they get that top pick, I've talked about it before, I think they go aggressive with the draft capital they have and go, all right, let's see if we can pry Devin Booker loose from the Phoenix Suns, because the Suns have nothing. They have nothing, literally nothing. They've got Kevin Durant, who they're going to get rid of because Kevin Durant doesn't want to be there anymore. He wants to win another ring before he retires. And then Bradley Beal was a bust, a wild bust, and I don't think any team in the NBA wants him or his contract, which leaves Devin Booker as the only other piece that a team would want. And what better trade partner than the Utah Jazz with all of that draft capital that they could just plop on your front door and go, all right, give them. So the Jazz get Cooper Flagg. They get Devin Booker. They have Lauri Markkanen. They have Keontae George, Colin Sexton. They have all these guys, Jordan Clarkson. I think that's an almost Western Conference final roster. I mean, that's a lot of dominoes that have to fall, a lot of pieces that have to fit in perfectly. But if that happens, not only will I be sitting pretty, but the Jazz will be as well. That's what I want to have happen this offseason for the Utah Jazz and for the Utah Hockey Club. And oh, by the way, everybody in Utah should be rooting for the Avalanche. I'm just going to throw that out there to knock out the Dallas Stars because I hate the Dallas Stars. Okie dokie. So now let's move it along to the transfer madness that is going on with the University of Utah and BYU. So Utah basketball got a 4-star transfer in. It's pretty good. I was not expecting them to get that so fast. Elijah Moore is transferring in from Syracuse, 4-star recruit, pretty darn good. So that's encouraging for all of you Utah fans. For BYU, more transfers out than in. Triplett is gone. He was a fan favorite. And obviously Dawson Baker transferred out. But, I mean, what's coming in is so much better than what they're losing. Like, if you look at, like, the transfer top 100 or even top 150 from different sources, like ESPN, 24/7 recruiting, stuff like that, no BYU player transferring out makes the list, but they have one of the best, one of the top 10 transferring in. And then, obviously, the three recruits that they have that I mentioned last week, obviously highlighted by AJ DeBansa. So there's a lot of transfer madness going on when it comes to basketball. When it comes to football, BYU, you got some issues going on. The big one is Keelan Marion. Now, from what I can understand and gather from the beat reporters that cover BYU football, is he's not necessarily out the door. He's just testing the NIL waters to see if there's a better deal for him. And I'm all for that. I have been since the beginning. Get what you're worth. Transfer out. Get the money. Make sure the money is coming in before you do it, but get the money, right? And if BYU and the NIL and their boosters, bring up their price for you, all the better. You come back and go, I was never leaving anyway. I love it in Provo. And the fans will eat that up. So I am fine with Keelan Marion doing that. He's not even really necessarily out the door. He's just kind of testing the waters. Now, the one that hurts is Harrison Taggart. Harrison Taggart is part of that linebacking crew that we were all super stoked about coming back next year. Well, he's in the transfer portal as well. And that's a little worrying because they don't really have anything to replace him along the front of that, scary linebacking crew. Highlighted by, Isaiah Glasker, who is probably going to be an All-American linebacker next year. Probably going to go in the first 2 rounds of the draft. Yeah, he's pretty good. Jack Kelly, he's pretty good too. So losing Harrison Taggart is losing the middle of that. And that's scary. Do I think he's really gone? Tough to say. It's really tough to say. And the reason I say that is because when you look at it, where would he go? Who would give him more money? And how would he fit in a different scheme? Because when he fits perfectly in Jay Hill's defensive scheme, I don't know how he fits elsewhere. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. That one's more worrying. Now, the transfer portal works both ways, right? So Kalani Sitake could go out there and get another linebacker who could be more talented that could fit just as well. And I'm fully confident in Jay Hill being able to fit even myself into that secondary to look good. So that's how confident I am in the defensive coordinator and the defensive staff that BYU has to replace Harrison Taggart. But that one worried me a little bit more than seeing Keelan Marion doing it. Now, Keelan Marion, he's going to be tough to replace, but they still have Parker Kingston, and then they still have some other pieces still there that are fast and can do the returner's job. It's never easy to replace an All-American, though, and that's what Keelan Marion was. So I hope he comes back, but if he goes on, all the best to him. All right, everybody, that is the show this week. Let me know your thoughts on the Miller family returning to sports ownership in Utah. Do you think it's going to go as poorly as I do? Let me know how you think BYU will do in the transfer portal for football, how you think they've done in basketball, and then your thoughts for the future of Utah athletics, like University of Utah. Is it a holding pattern until Whittingham finally decides to hang it up? Are they hampered by there not being a big vault of money that they can draw from for NIL to get recruits like BYU does? I don't know. But only the future will tell, and I'll be here to tell you about all of it. So thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.